Poor mom tries to buy Christmas gift for her daughter, but is $10 short. Until the billionaire's son sees and does the unbelievable. The toy store was pure chaos. It was Christmas Eve, and it seemed like the whole town had decided to shop at the same time. The shelves were packed, lights flashed in every possible color, and Christmas music played non-stop over the speakers. Children ran everywhere, parents carried enormous bags, and the scent of cinnamon wafted from a nearby candle shop. Sarah Collins took a deep breath before stepping inside. She held her daughter's hand tightly, as if afraid to lose her amidst the crowd. Mia was 5 years old, with blonde hair that shimmered under the store lights, and blue eyes that looked like two clear, vibrant pebbles. At that moment, she was radiant. "Mommy, is it today? Is today the day I get my doll?" Sarah looked down and smiled, despite the tightness in her chest. "Yes, it is, my love." Mia let out a high-pitched squeal of happiness and started jumping in place. She tugged her mother's arm, practically running down the main aisle of the store. Sarah had to quicken her pace to keep up. The little girl knew exactly where she was going. Weeks ago, they had walked past this store, and Mia had seen the doll in the window display. Since then, she hadn't talked about anything else. She drew the doll, dreamed about it, and counted down the days until Christmas arrived. And Sarah had promised. Even knowing money was tight, even knowing December had been a difficult month, she had promised. Mia stopped in front of the shelf and pointed with her little finger. "It's this one and Mommy. Look!" The doll was there, inside a clear box. It wasn't anything elaborate, it was simple, in fact. It had a light blue dress, long straight hair, and a sweet smile painted on its plastic face. But to Mia, that doll was everything. Sarah picked up the box and handed it to her daughter. Mia held it as if it were a real treasure. She hugged the box to her chest and looked at the doll through the plastic, with a smile that was too big for her face. "She's perfect, Mommy." "She is, my love. Let's go pay now, okay?" Mia nodded, still hypnotized by the doll. They walked toward the checkout. The line was enormous, but Mia didn't mind. She spent the entire time quietly chatting with the doll, as if they were already friends. Sarah, on the other hand, felt her stomach churn. She had counted the money 3 times at home. She knew exactly how much she had. $50. The doll cost $49.99. It had worked out. It was going to work out. But now, standing there in line, a terrible doubt began to grow inside her. What if she'd miscounted? What if she'd forgotten a bill? What if there wasn't enough money? She shook her head, trying to push away the negative thoughts. She couldn't think like that. It had to work out. Finally, it was their turn. The cashier was a young woman with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She picked up the doll's box, scanned the barcode, and the price appeared on the computer screen. $59.99. Sarah froze. 59. No, it couldn't be. She had seen the price. 49. She was sure. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I thought it was 49. The cashier looked at the screen and then at the box. "Oh, this model went up in price this week. Sorry, it's 59. Sarah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She opened her wallet with trembling hands and began counting the bills. $10, $20, $30, $40, $49. She was 10 short. She rummaged through her entire wallet. She looked in every pocket, in the folds and under the cards. She searched her purse. Nothing. She had nothing left. Her face felt hot. She felt the shame creep up her neck and cheeks. The people behind her in line started shifting impatiently. Someone sighed loudly. Another checked their watch. Sarah looked at the cashier, her eyes already starting to sting. "Can you give me a discount?" Her voice came out low, almost a desperate whisper. The cashier made a face of pity but shook her head. "I'm so sorry. I can't." Sarah felt the tears coming. She didn't know what to do anymore. She looked down and saw Mia clutching the doll with all her strength, her little blue eyes full of hope, not quite understanding what was happening. "Mommy!" The girl's voice was small, scared. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to control herself. She couldn't fall apart here in front of everyone, not in front of her daughter. "Just a moment, my love," she said, trying to smile, but her voice cracked. Mia realized. The little girl lowered her head and hugged the doll even tighter, as if afraid someone would snatch it from her arms. Her lips trembled, and she began squeezing her eyes shut, trying not to cry. Sarah felt her heart shatter. Across the store, near the car and action figure section, a little blonde boy was watching everything. Oliver Hayes was 5 years old, with light, straight blonde hair and attentive blue eyes. He was with his father, choosing a toy, but something about the scene near the checkout caught his attention. He saw the mother opening her wallet. He saw the desperation on her face. He saw the sadness of the little girl hugging the doll as if it were the most important thing in the world. Oliver felt something strange in his chest, a strong urge to do something. He tugged on his father's jacket sleeve. Graham Hayes was looking at a shelf of educational toys. He was a tall man, with well-groomed blonde hair, clear blue eyes and a face that conveyed seriousness, but also kindness. He was wearing a grey sweater, dark jeans, and a wool coat. Nothing flashy. He always preferred it that way. Simple. Discreet. "What is it, son?" Graham crouched down to be at Oliver's height. The boy discreetly pointed toward the checkout. "Dad? They don't have enough money to buy the toy. Look at the girl. She's sad." Graham turned his head and looked. He saw Sarah still standing at the register, holding the bills in her hand, her face red with embarrassment. He saw Mia with her head bowed, hugging the doll, her little eyes starting to fill with tears. His chest tightened. He knew that feeling. He had been there on the other side. He had been the child who wanted something and couldn't have it. He had seen his mother embarrassed because money was short. He looked at his son. Oliver's eyes were full of worry, of a genuine desire to help. "Can I help, Dad?" Oliver asked, his voice soft but firm. Graham felt a lump in his throat. That boy. That pure and kind heart. He had done everything right raising Oliver. He had taught him values, empathy, gratitude, and here was the living proof of it. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and took out a $10 bill. He handed it to Oliver, placing his hand affectionately on his son's shoulder. "You can, son. Go ahead." Oliver held the bill with both hands, as if it was something very precious. He walked to the checkout, moving through the people in line. Some looked at him with curiosity. Others didn't even notice. He stopped beside Sarah and turned to the cashier. With a thin, clear voice, he said, "Ma'am, can I take this money?" He stretched out his arm, handing her the $10 bill. The cashier blinked, surprised. Sarah turned to the side and saw the little blonde boy, with bright blue eyes, offering exactly what was missing. For a second, she couldn't process what was happening. I can't accept that," Sarah said. Her voice choked. Oliver shook his head. "Yes, you can. It's so the girl can get the doll." The cashier looked at Sarah, then at Oliver, and smiled. She took the bill, completed the payment in the system, and placed the doll inside a bag. "There you go. Merry Christmas," she said, handing the bag to Mia. Mia slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were red, but when she saw the bag in her hand, her whole face lit up. She hugged the bag to her chest and cracked the biggest smile in the world. "It's mine. Really mine." Sarah, still in shock, nodded. "It is, my love." Mia turned to Oliver, her eyes sparkling. "Thank you so much." Oliver blushed but smiled back. Sarah knelt down in front of the boy. Tears were now streaming freely down her face, but they were tears of relief, of gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means to us." Oliver shrugged, shyly. "You're welcome." Graham approached, placing his hand on his son's shoulder. He looked at Sarah with a gentle, sincere smile. "Merry Christmas." Sarah tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. She just nodded, holding Mia's hand. The two walked slowly out of the store, and Sarah looked back one last time. She saw the father and son walking away together, talking quietly. Something had changed in that moment. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it. An invisible thread had been woven there. In the parking lot, Graham buckled Oliver into the back seat of the car. The boy was quiet, looking out the window with a thoughtful expression. Graham got into the driver's seat, started the engine, but paused for a moment. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw his son lost in thought. "Are you okay, son?" Oliver took a moment to reply. "Dad, do some people not have money to buy toys?" Graham took a deep breath. He knew that question would come eventually. Oliver was a protected child, raised with comfort. But Graham always wanted him to understand the world honestly. "Yes, son, and it's very sad." Oliver frowned, trying to understand. "Why?" "Because not everyone has the same opportunities," Graham explained, choosing his words carefully. "Some people work very hard. They try their best, but it's still difficult. Life isn't fair to everyone. Oliver." The boy was silent, absorbing it all. Graham continued. "But do you know what you did today? You made their day happier. You helped someone who needed it. And that's really important, to be kind, to be grateful for what we have, and to help when we can." Oliver smiled, a small but proud smile. "I liked helping, Dad. I know, and I'm very proud of you." Graham started the car and began to pull out of the parking lot. As he drove, he thought about everything he had experienced. He, too, had once been that child who had nothing. He knew what it was like to be in need, to feel shame, to depend on the kindness of others. But he had been lucky. He had been adopted by a family who gave him everything: education, love, opportunities. And now, he was passing that on to his son. Not just the money, but the values, the empathy, the humanity. Outside, on the sidewalk in front of the store, Sarah stood with Mia. The girl was shaking the bag happily, telling her mother all the details of the doll. But Sarah wasn't listening closely. She was looking at the car slowly leaving the parking lot. Through the window, she could see the father and son talking. The way the man looked at the boy, with attention, with affection, she felt something strange in her chest. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something else. A feeling that those two people weren't like others, that there, in that car, was something rare. A rich man, yes, but human, real. Sarah didn't know it, but that encounter at the toy store was just the beginning. Something had been planted that day. An invisible thread had been woven between two families that should never have crossed paths. And destiny, silent and patient, was already beginning to pull that thread. The downtown was transformed. White and gold lights decorated all the trees. Wreaths hung from the lampposts shone softly, and Christmas music played quietly over speakers scattered throughout the streets. Families walked slowly, stopping to take pictures. Children pointed at the decorated shop windows, and the smell of hot chocolate drifted from a cart on the corner. Sarah held Mia's hand as they walked along the sidewalk. The girl was radiant, skipping back and forth, pointing out every detail of the decorations. "Mommy, look at that star. It's gigantic." Sarah smiled, took out her phone, and snapped a picture. It wasn't an expensive camera. The image wasn't perfect, but for her, it was great. It was a memory. A simple but happy moment. They continued toward the town square. There was the city's main attraction, an enormous Christmas tree, fully decorated with red, gold, and silver baubles. Lights twinkled at a gentle rhythm, and at the top shone a golden star that could be seen from afar. Mia let go of her mother's hand and ran closer to the tree, spinning around it with her arms wide open. "It's the most beautiful tree in the world, Mommy." Sarah laughed, feeling her chest warm. After everything that had happened that day, seeing her daughter so happy made it all worthwhile. Across the square, Graham was walking beside Oliver. The boy was also enchanted by the lights, but suddenly stopped in his tracks and pointed forward. "Dad, look, it's the girl from the store." Graham looked in that direction and saw them. Sarah was near the tree, taking pictures of Mia, who was spinning and laughing by herself. Before Graham could say anything, Oliver had already darted off. "Mia!" The girl stopped spinning and looked over. When she saw Oliver coming toward her, her face completely lit up. "Oliver!" The two met in the middle of the square and started laughing, as if they were old friends. Mia grabbed Oliver's hand and pulled him toward the tree. "Come see the tree, it's huge." Oliver followed, smiling. They began playing around the tree, running, laughing loudly, completely absorbed in their own world. Sarah looked back and saw Graham approaching. She felt her face grow warm. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Graham walked closer and gave a shy smile. "Hi." "Hi," Sarah replied, also a little awkward. They stood there, watching the children play. The snow on the ground was soft, and Oliver showed Mia how to make snow angels. They lay down side by side and began moving their arms and legs, laughing non-stop. Sarah took a deep breath and gathered the courage to speak. "I don't know how to thank you for what your son did today." Graham shook his head with a gentle smile. "He asked to do it. I just let him." Sarah looked at him, trying to understand. It wasn't common to find people like this. People who genuinely taught kindness to their children. Even so, it meant so much to us. "You can't imagine." Graham shrugged. "I think I can." There was something in his voice that made Sarah believe him. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. As if he really knew what it was like to go through that. They stood in silence for a moment, just watching the children. Oliver and Mia were now running around the tree, playing tag, laughing so hard they could barely breathe. Graham broke the silence. "Do you live here in town?" "I do, and you?" "Me too. We live in a quieter neighborhood, but Oliver loves coming downtown to see the lights." Sarah smiled. "Mia too. She's been asking for weeks to come see the tree." "It is beautiful." They turned back to the children. Mia had fallen in the snow and was laughing while Oliver tried to help her up. Both were covered in snow, their cheeks red from the cold, but completely happy. "Your son is very kind," Sarah said sincerely. "Thank you, I try to teach him what I can." "You're doing it right." Graham looked at her and smiled. It was a sincere smile, without arrogance, without heaviness, just gratitude. Sarah stepped back slightly to get her phone from her purse and take another picture of the children. While she was rummaging in her bag, Oliver walked over to his father and tugged on his jacket sleeve. "Dad!" Graham crouched down to his son's level. "What is it, son?" Oliver looked at Mia, who was trying to make another snow angel, and then looked at his father with those blue eyes full of hope. "Can I invite them to Christmas dinner?" Graham blinked, surprised. He looked at Sarah, who was still turned away, busy with her purse, and then looked back at his son. Oliver was serious, waiting for the answer. Graham felt his chest tighten again. That boy. That huge heart. He smiled and placed his hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Of course, you can." Oliver's face lit up. He ran back to Mia, who had just finished her snow angel. "Mia! Mia!" The girl looked up at him, still lying on the ground. "What?" "Do you and your mum want to have Christmas Eve dinner with us?" Mia sat up in the snow, her eyes wide. "Really? Really?" Mia jumped up and ran towards Sarah, who had just put her phone away. "Mommy, Mommy!" "We've been invited to Christmas dinner." Sarah looked at her daughter, confused, and then looked at Graham. He walked closer, his hands in his pockets, a slightly shy smile on his face. "Oliver would really love it if you two could join us for Christmas dinner." Sarah was speechless. She looked at Mia, who was practically jumping with joy, and then looked back at Graham. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, just accept." Sarah felt her eyes sting again. It wasn't possible. This wasn't really happening. She had woken up that morning not knowing if she could buy her daughter the doll, and now she was being invited to dinner at the house of a stranger who had saved their Christmas. "I don't want to intrude." "You won't intrude," Graham said, firmly but kindly. "It would be a pleasure to have you." Mia tugged at her mother's hand. "Mommy, please, please." Sarah looked at her daughter, at that little face full of hope, and then looked at Graham. He waited patiently, without pressure. She took a deep breath and smiled. "Okay, we accept." Mia screamed with delight and ran back to Oliver, who also celebrated. The two went back to playing in the snow, now even more excited. Graham smiled, relieved. "Then it's settled. Christmas Eve, 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address." Sarah nodded, still processing everything. "Thank you, again." "Stop thanking me," Graham said, laughing quietly. "It's going to get sickening." Sarah laughed too, feeling the tension in her shoulders finally dissolve. They stayed there a while longer, talking about simple things, about the town, about the children, about how Christmas always made everything prettier. Graham told her that Oliver loved setting up the Christmas tree at home, and Sarah shared that Mia had made a giant wish list, but had only really asked for one thing, the doll. When they finally said goodbye, it was getting dark. The lights in the square shone even brighter, and the snow continued to fall softly. Sarah and Mia headed home, hand in hand. Mia wouldn't stop talking about Oliver, about the tree, about Christmas dinner. Sarah listened to everything in silence, with a smile on her face. For the first time in a long time, she felt that things were beginning to change. And that night, when she tucked Mia into bed, Sarah stood for a moment looking out the window. The streetlights flickered softly, and she thought about everything that had happened that day. An invisible thread had been woven, and she was beginning to feel that that thread was stronger than she imagined. Sarah stopped in front of the mirror for the 5th time. She adjusted the simple, discreet navy blue dress, the only one she had for special occasions. It wasn't sophisticated, but it was clean and well pressed. She pinned her blonde hair into a low bun and took a deep breath. "Mommy, can we go now?" Mia appeared at the bedroom door, wearing a little red dress that Sarah had found in a second-hand shop weeks ago. "Yes, my love, let's go." The drive to Graham's house was silent. Sarah gripped the steering wheel of her old car tightly, trying to control her nervousness. Mia, on the other hand, was radiant, swinging her legs in the back seat, humming a Christmas carol. When they arrived at the address, Sarah felt her stomach churn. The house was beautiful, but not exaggerated. It was large, yes, but cozy. It had white lights decorating the entrance, a wreath on the door, and the warm yellow light coming from the windows gave off a sense of warmth. Sarah parked and looked back. "Ready?" Mia nodded, excited. They got out of the car and walked to the door. Sarah took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Seconds later, the door opened. Graham was there, wearing a light grey shirt and dark trousers. He smiled when he saw them. "You made it. Come in, it's cold out there." Sarah stepped inside, holding Mia's hand. The warmth of the house immediately enveloped them. The smell of home-cooked food was in the air, and the Christmas decor was elegant but simple. An illuminated tree in the corner of the living room, candles on the table, discreet wreaths on the walls. "What a beautiful house," Sarah said, almost whispering. "Thank you. Please, make yourselves at home, really." Before Sarah could answer, Oliver ran into the living room. "Mia!" The girl let go of her mother's hand and ran toward him. The two hugged as if they hadn't seen each other in months, and in seconds they were running through the rooms, laughing loudly. Graham laughed and shook his head. "They hit it off quickly, didn't they?" Sarah smiled, still a little tense. "They really did. Come, let me show you the house." Graham led her to the dining room. The table was set, and Sarah felt her heart tighten. Everything was beautiful. White tablecloth, neatly arranged plates, glass goblets, lit candles in the center. It wasn't ostentatious, it was thoughtful. "Did you do all this?" Sarah asked, impressed. "I did. I like to cook. It calms me down." Sarah looked at him, surprised. She hadn't expected that. Graham pulled out a chair for her. "Sit down. I'll call the children." He went to the living room and returned a few minutes later with Oliver and Mia, who were still laughing. The children sat side by side, and Graham sat at the head of the table. Sarah sat across from him. The dinner was plentiful. Roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, colorful vegetables, warm bread rolls, various sauces. There was a bit of everything, but nothing was overdone. It was a table set with care. Graham served a little bit of everything onto the children's plates first. Sarah watched how he cut small pieces of turkey for Oliver, how he patiently explained what everything on the plate was. "Try the mashed potatoes, son. They're good." Oliver tasted them and smiled. "They are delicious, Dad." Mia tried them too and nodded, excited. "It's so yummy." Sarah felt her eyes sting. She couldn't explain it, but being there in that environment, seeing her daughter happy, feeling the warmth of that house, it was too much. Graham looked at her and noticed. "Are you all right?" Sarah blinked quickly, trying to hide it. "I am. It's been a long time since we've had a Christmas like this." Graham didn't say anything. He just smiled, in a way that showed he understood. Sarah started serving Mia, putting a little bit of everything on the girl's plate. She adjusted the napkin on her lap, cut the pieces of meat into small bites, and only then served her own plate. Graham watched everything in silence, the way Sarah took care of her daughter. The attention, the affection, the patience. She did everything with so much love. Meanwhile, Sarah was also observing Graham, the way he looked at Oliver when the boy spoke. How he truly listened, paying attention to every word. How he responded patiently, teaching without being authoritative. "Dad, can I have more mashed potatoes?" "Of course, but eat slowly, okay?" "Okay," Sarah smiled. There was something very special about this man. He wasn't just wealthy. He was present, human. The conversation during dinner was light. Graham told funny stories about Oliver when he was younger, and Sarah shared some of Mia's adventures. The children laughed, interrupted, added exaggerated details. And then Mia threw paint everywhere. Sarah recounted, laughing. On the wall, on the floor, on herself. Mia blushed, but laughed too. "I was little, Mommy." "You were, my love," Graham smiled, looking at the two of them. There was something so genuine about them. Sarah was strong, but also delicate. Mia was full of life, cheerful, spontaneous. He felt something strange in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. After dinner, they moved to the living room. The children sat on the floor near the tree, playing with some toys Graham had set aside. Sarah and Graham sat on the sofa, talking quietly. "Thank you for all this," Sarah said, sincerely. "You have no idea how much this means to us." "Stop thanking me," Graham said, laughing softly. "I should be thanking you. It's been a long time since this house had so much life." Sarah looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" Graham hesitated for a moment. "It's just Oliver and me here. It's been that way for a while." Sarah understood. She didn't ask anything else. It wasn't the time. They stayed there watching the children play. Mia showed Oliver the doll, and he pretended to talk to her. They laughed so hard they could barely breathe. Sarah felt a peace she hadn't felt in years. She looked around, saw the illuminated tree, the candles still lit on the table, heard her daughter's laughter. And next to her, Graham, who watched everything with the same gentle smile. "You have a beautiful home," Sarah said quietly. Graham looked at her. "Thank you, but I think today it became even more beautiful." Sarah felt her face warm. She looked away, but smiled. Right there, in that moment, between children's laughter, candlelight, and gentle glances, something was being born. It was subtle, but real. A connection that didn't rely on words, but on presence, on care, on mutual understanding. When the evening ended and Sarah put Mia in the car, the girl was almost asleep, but still smiling. "It was the best Christmas of my life, Mommy." Sarah felt the tears return, but this time they were tears of happiness. "Mine too, my love." She looked back, saw Graham and Oliver at the door waving, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt that maybe, just maybe, life was truly beginning to change. The apartment was silent. The small Christmas tree that Sarah had put up with Mia was still in the corner of the living room, but the lights no longer twinkled. The ornaments seemed dimmer now that Christmas was over. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table with a pile of papers in front of her, bills, all overdue or soon to be due. She picked up the first one, electricity bill, due date, 2 days ago. She picked up the second, water, due date, tomorrow. The third was the gas, the fourth, the rent. And then there was the grocery list, which she had jotted down on a crumpled piece of paper. Sarah took a deep breath and picked up a pen. She began totaling everything mentally, writing the amounts next to each bill. When she reached the total, her stomach churned. She didn't have enough money. She did the math again, this time trying to see where she could cut costs. Maybe she could negotiate the rent. Maybe she could postpone the electricity bill. Maybe she could buy less at the grocery store this month. But even so, the numbers didn't add up. Sarah put the pen on the table and rubbed her face with her hands. She was tired. Not just physically, but mentally. Tired of always being in this situation. Tired of counting every penny. Tired of having to choose between paying a bill or buying food. Christmas had been wonderful. For the first time in years, she had seen her daughter truly happy. She had been invited to a dinner. She had felt welcome. She had laughed. She had felt a part of something. But now reality came back with full force. Sarah looked at the refrigerator. It was almost empty. There was a little milk, some leftovers, eggs. She would have to make it last until the end of the week. She sighed and looked back at the bills. She tried to reorganize everything again, but no matter how she did it, she was always short on money. Suddenly, she heard small footsteps coming from the hallway. Mia appeared at the kitchen door, in her pink pajamas and messy blonde hair. She was clutching the Christmas doll to her chest. "Mommy?" Sarah quickly gathered the bills and turned the paper face down, trying to hide them. "Hi, my love. What is it? Can't you sleep?" Mia shook her head and walked slowly closer. She stood next to the chair, looking up at her mother with those blue eyes full of concern. "Are you sad, Mommy?" Sarah felt her chest tighten. She forced a smile and pulled her daughter close, stroking her hair. "No, my love, just tired." Mia didn't look convinced. "Are you crying?" No. Just sleepy." Mia kept looking at her for a little longer, as if trying to decide whether or not to believe her. Then she hugged her mother, squeezing tightly. "I love you, Mommy." Sarah felt the tears well up again, but she held them back firmly. "I love you too, my darling, very much." She kissed the top of Mia's head and stood up, picking the girl up in her arms. "Come on, let's put you back to bed." Sarah carried Mia back to the bedroom. The room was small but tidy. There was a single bed against the wall, covered with a light pink comforter. Beside it, a low shelf with a few books and toys. Sarah tucked Mia into bed and pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Go to sleep, okay? We'll play tomorrow." Mia held the doll tightly and closed her eyes. Sarah stayed there for a few minutes, watching her daughter fall asleep. When she finally heard her breathing become slow and deep, she quietly left the room, closing the door gently. Back in the kitchen, Sarah sat down again and looked at the bills. She picked up one of the sheets and stared at the numbers, as if looking at them more times would make them change. But they didn't change. She felt the tears begin to fall. Slowly, silently, streaming down her face without her doing anything to stop them. Sarah put her hand over her mouth to muffle any sound and let herself cry. She cried for the bill she wouldn't be able to pay. She cried for the money she didn't have. She cried for the constant feeling of always being one step behind, always trying to catch up. But most of all, she cried for the fear. Fear of not being able to give her daughter what she needed. Fear of losing the apartment. Fear of failing as a mother. She stayed there for a few minutes, letting it all out. But then she took a deep breath and wiped her face with the back of her hand. She couldn't fall apart. She couldn't. Mia needed her whole. She needed a strong, present mother who wouldn't let the weight of the world fall on her. Sarah stood up, went to the sink and washed her face. The cold water helped to calm her down. She looked at her reflection in the kitchen window and saw a tired woman, but still standing. She would figure it out. She always did. She would look for more work, knock on more doors, do whatever was necessary. Sarah went back to the table, gathered the bills, and put everything inside an old folder. She stored it in the drawer. Tomorrow she would think about it again. Tomorrow she would make a new plan. But today she just wanted to sleep. She turned off the kitchen light, gave one last look at the Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, and went to the bedroom. She lay down in the bed next to Mia, who was sleeping deeply, hugging the doll. Sarah looked at her daughter for a while. That serene little face, the blonde hair spread on the pillow, her lips slightly parted. For her, Sarah could endure anything. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But even in the dark, the numbers on the bills still danced in her head. And outside, the city continued, indifferent to the silent battles taking place inside that small apartment. Sarah needed to get out of the house. The apartment walls seemed to be closing in on her, suffocating her. The bill papers were still stored in the drawer, but she felt their weight even without seeing them. It was as if those numbers were etched in her mind, spinning non-stop, reminding her that she had no solution. Mia was restless too. pacing back and forth in the small apartment, asking to play outside. "Mommy, can we go see the lights again?" Sarah looked out the window. The day was cold, but the sun shone in the clean blue sky. Maybe a little fresh air would help clear her head, ward off that constant feeling of drowning in insoluble problems. "Okay, my love. Let's go." They bundled up warmly. Sarah put the thickest coat she had on Mia, adjusted the pink scarf around the girl's neck, and pulled the wool hat down to cover her little ears. She herself put on an old but warm coat that she had owned for a few years, and they went out together. The downtown was different now. The magic of Christmas was being dismantled piece by piece. Men in orange uniforms climbed high ladders, removing wreaths from the lampposts. Trucks parked on the streets carried decorated trees that now looked empty, stripped of their shining ornaments. The lights that had sparkled so brightly days ago were now dark, being carefully coiled into brown cardboard boxes. Mia held her mother's hand, looking around with sadness in her clear blue eyes. "Why are they taking everything away, Mommy?" "Because Christmas is over, my love. But I wish it could stay forever." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand affectionately, feeling her chest tighten too. "Me too." They walked slowly to the town square. The large tree was still there, imposing and tall, but the lights were all off. Some workers were busy around it, organizing boxes of colorful ornaments, coiling long wires, dismantling metal structures that supported the decorations. Sarah sat on a wooden bench near where the tree stood. Mia let go of her mother's hand and went to play in the snow that still covered part of the square, making small balls with her cold little hands and trying to pile them on top of each other. Sarah stared into space. Her mind was far away, lost in the numbers that didn't add up, the bills that kept coming in the mail, the phone that wasn't ringing with job offers. She had called at least 10 houses that week. All of them said they didn't need a cleaner at the moment. Some didn't even call her back. She was so absorbed in her own thoughts, so lost in that feeling of drowning, that she almost didn't hear the voice that shouted excitedly from the other side of the square. "Mia!" Sarah quickly lifted her head. She saw Oliver running toward Mia, his blonde hair tousled by the cold wind. The girl looked back, and when she saw her friend, her face lit up completely, as if someone had switched a light on inside. "Oliver!" The two met in the middle of the square and immediately began to play tay as if they had planned it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Loud, joyful laughter filled the cold morning air. Sarah looked to the side and saw Graham approaching. He was dressed casually but elegantly, dark leather jacket, grey wool scarf wrapped around his neck, dark jeans, and black boots. His hands were in his pockets, and he walked with that calm, confident posture he always had. He smiled when he saw her, but the smile faded when he looked closer at her face. Something was different, something heavy. Her gaze was dull, tired. "Hi," he said, stopping in front of the bench. "Hi," Sarah replied, trying to smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Graham hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to come closer. Then he pointed to the empty space beside her on the bench. "May I?" "Of course." He sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance. They were silent for a few seconds, just watching the children play. Oliver showed Mia how to make a perfect snowball, compacting the snow with both hands in careful circular motions. Mia tried to imitate him, concentrating, but the ball crumbled in her little hands and she laughed. Graham discreetly looked at Sarah. She was different from the day of Christmas dinner. The sparkle in her eyes was completely gone. Her shoulders were slumped, as if she were carrying a huge, invisible weight on her back. There was a deep sadness in her face, an exhaustion he hadn't seen before. "Is everything all right?" he asked, carefully, his voice low and gentle. Sarah took a while to answer. She continued looking at the children, but Graham saw her swallow hard, as if she were trying to hold back something that threatened to spill over. "It is," she said, but her voice was weak, without any conviction. Graham didn't press her. He didn't push. He just stayed there, waiting, giving her space. He had learned that sometimes people just needed time, silence, presence without judgment. And then, suddenly, as if a dam had broken, Sarah started to talk. "I'm a cleaner," she said, still looking ahead at the children playing in the snow. "I work cleaning houses. It's how I support us. It's what I've always done." Graham listened in silence, without interrupting. Except, a lot of families traveled for the holidays. December was awful. Hardly anyone called, and January is being even worse. Much worse. Her voice started to tremble slightly. "I'm calling everyone I know, sending messages, knocking on doors. I'm trying to get any odd job that comes up. Anything. Cleaning, scrubbing, organizing. Whatever it takes. But nothing comes up. No one needs help." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to control herself, trying not to fall apart there, in public. "The bills keep coming. Electricity, water, gas, rent, groceries. And I have no other source of income. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know where else to turn." She covered her face with her hands, embarrassed. She didn't want to be saying this. She didn't want to seem weak, desperate, incapable of taking care of her own daughter. But she couldn't carry everything alone anymore. The weight was crushing her, suffocating her. "I'm sorry," she said, quickly wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I shouldn't be telling you this. You barely know me. It's not your problem." "No," Graham said, firmly but kindly. "Don't apologize. Never apologize for this." He turned completely toward her. Sarah finally lifted her face and looked into his eyes. Graham didn't have pity in his eyes, no judgment. He didn't have that air of superiority that some wealthy people had when they looked at someone in difficulty. He had empathy, true, deep understanding. As if he really understood what she was going through, as if he had been in that dark place himself. "Sarah," he began, his voice low but firm, looking directly into her eyes. "Let me help you." Sarah was silent. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to say that she could manage alone, that she always had, that she didn't need anyone. But the truth was there, stark and raw, impossible to ignore. She wasn't managing, and pretending she was would only make everything worse. She didn't answer with words, but her gaze, tired, vulnerable, full of a fragile hope that barely dared to exist, showed that she needed that help. It showed that she was at her limit, on the razor's edge. Graham understood. He didn't pressure her anymore. He just stayed there beside her, offering his presence as a safe harbor amidst the storm that threatened to swallow Sarah. 2 days later, Sarah parked the old car in front of Graham's house. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. She had accepted his offer. 1 day of work, general cleaning and organization of the house. She looked in the rearview mirror at the back seat, where Mia was sitting, swinging her little legs and quietly humming a song. "Are we going to see Oliver, Mommy?" "Yes, my love." Sarah took a deep breath, grabbed her old purse, and got out of the car. She helped Mia out and the two walked to the door. Sarah rang the doorbell, feeling her heart beat faster, nervous. The door opened almost immediately. Graham was there, with a calm and welcoming smile on his face. "Hi, come in." "Hi," Sarah replied, stepping inside with Mia. Before she could say anything, Oliver came running down the hallway, almost slipping in his socks. "Mia! Oliver!" The two children hugged tightly and ran off to the back of the house, laughing loudly, their voices echoing through the rooms. "They're going to play in the yard," Graham said, closing the door behind them. "There's still plenty of snow out there. Then they can go to the playroom." Sarah nodded, taking off her coat. "So you can leave your things here." Graham pointed to the coat rack near the door. "And relax, seriously. Make yourself at home." Sarah smiled, still a little tense, but grateful for his kindness. She started work. She cleaned the kitchen, which was a bit messy, with dishes in the sink and crumbs scattered on the marble counter. She tidied the living room, arranged the books that were spread on the coffee table, wiped down the dark wood furniture, vacuumed the large rug that covered part of the floor. She dusted the shelves full of books, cleaned the window panes until they shone. Graham stayed nearby, working on his laptop at the living room table, but always attentive to what was happening. Occasionally, he would get up to fetch something from the kitchen or help Sarah with something heavy, like moving the large sofa to clean underneath. "You don't need to do that," Sarah said, when he helped push the sofa back into place. "I know, but I want to help." Sarah smiled, a little more relaxed now. In the middle of the day, Graham prepared a snack. Simple but delicious sandwiches, fresh orange juice, colorful bowl of chopped fruit. He called the children, who came running, covered in snow from head to toe, their cheeks red from the cold, but their eyes sparkling with happiness. They ate together at the kitchen table. Graham talked to Sarah, asking how she was getting organized, if she needed anything specific, if she was managing to deal with everything on her mind. Sarah opened up a little more. She talked about the daily struggles, about how difficult it was to be a single mother, about how sometimes she felt completely lost, unsure if she was doing the right things. Graham listened with genuine attention, without interrupting, without judging, just absorbing every word. The children finished eating quickly and went back to playing. Sarah returned to work, and Graham continued watching from afar. He noticed every detail, the careful way she cleaned without letting anything go unnoticed, the honesty with which she treated the things in the house, as if they were her own, the affection with which she tidied everything, putting each thing in the right place. Late in the afternoon, when Sarah was finishing putting away the cleaning supplies, Graham called her over. "Stay for dinner with us, I'm making pasta. The kids love it." Sarah hesitated for a moment, but ended up accepting. She was already more at ease than the first time. Dinner was peaceful and delicious. Laughter, light conversation, the children enthusiastically telling stories about the games they had invented. Sarah felt like she was part of it, and that warmed her inside in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. After dinner, as Sarah was getting ready to leave, putting on her coat and adjusting her purse, Graham picked up a white envelope that was on the table. "Here," he said, handing it to her. Sarah slowly opened the envelope and saw the money inside. She quickly counted it, her fingers trembling. It was much more than she expected. Much more than any cleaner would earn for a normal day of work. "No," she said immediately, handing the envelope back to him. "I can't accept all this. It's too much." Graham firmly but gently pushed the envelope back to her. "Yes, you can. You deserve every penny, and I know it will help with your bills." Sarah felt hot tears fill her eyes. She looked at the money, then at Graham, then back at the money. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just accept it." Sarah held the envelope with both hands, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Because at that moment, it was, "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Graham smiled. "You can come work whenever you want, whenever you need to. The door is always open." Sarah nodded, wiping the tears that streamed freely down her face. A new trust was being born there, a connection that went beyond employer and employee. It was mutual respect. It was genuine care. It was true empathy. And when Sarah left that house, with Mia sleeping in the back seat of the car, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Real hope. Sarah parked the old car in front of Graham's house. It was the 5th time that week she had come to work there. A routine was starting to form, and for the first time in a long time, it brought relief instead of anxiety. Having a routine meant stability. It meant she knew what to expect the next day. She got out of the car and helped Mia out of the back seat. The girl was already excited, swinging her pink backpack that held some toys and crayons. "Are we going to see Oliver again, Mommy?" "Yes, my love." Mia smiled broadly and ran to the door. Sarah followed, taking a deep breath. Ringing the doorbell still gave her butterflies, but it was different now. It wasn't fear, it wasn't shame. It was good anticipation. The door opened almost immediately. Oliver was there, his blue eyes sparkling with joy. "Mia!" "Oliver!" The two children hugged tightly and ran inside the house, laughing loudly, their voices echoing through the rooms. Graham appeared at the door right after, with a gentle smile on his face. "Hi, come in." "Hi," Sarah replied, stepping inside and taking off her coat. "Coffee's ready. I made it just the way you like it." Sarah smiled. He always did that. Small gestures that showed attention, genuine care. "Sarah, thank you." She went to the kitchen, picked up the mug Graham had left out for her on the counter, and took a sip. It was perfect. Hot, strong, with a touch of sugar, exactly the way she liked it. Sarah started the day's work. She cleaned the kitchen, which had a few pots in the sink from the night before. She tidied the living room, wiped down the wood furniture, vacuumed the large rug. She changed the bathroom towels, straightened the bedrooms, dusted the bookshelves. Graham stayed nearby, working on his laptop at the living room table, but always attentive. Occasionally he would get up to fetch something or help with something heavier, like moving a piece of furniture. The children played on the floor of the living room. Mia and Oliver built a huge tower of colorful blocks, laughing every time the tower collapsed with a crash. "Let's make it bigger," Oliver said, excited, stacking more blocks. "Bigger than the house," Mia agreed, focused on the task. Sarah watched from a distance while folding the clean towels she had just taken out of the dryer. They seemed like real siblings. The way they played together, how they understood each other without needing many words, how they laughed at the same things. It was natural. It was beautiful to see. Graham watched too, sitting on the sofa with his laptop on his lap. But he wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at the children and at Sarah. He slowly closed his laptop and placed it on the coffee table. He got up and approached Sarah, who was putting the folded towels into the hallway cabinet. "Sarah." She turned around, still holding a towel. "Yes." Graham looked away, at the children who were still playing and then back at her. There was something different in his gaze, something serious, but gentle. "Can I talk to you for a moment? Over here in the living room." Sarah felt her heart quicken slightly. His tone was serious but not heavy. It felt intimate. "Of course." They walked to the corner of the living room, near the large window that overlooked the snow-covered backyard. The children were far enough away not to hear. Graham put his hands in his pockets and took a deep breath, as if organizing his thoughts. "Sarah, you've been coming here for a few days now." "I have," she said, a little nervous, unsure where the conversation was going. "And I've noticed you do a great job. You take care of everything with attention, with care. The house has never been this organized." Sarah smiled shyly, feeling her face warm. "Sarah, thank you." Graham took a step forward, looking directly into her eyes. "I wanted to make you an offer." She widened her eyes, waiting, her heart beating faster. "If you want a permanent job, you're hired." Sarah blinked, processing the words. "What do you mean?" "Permanent work. Every day or as many days a week as you can. A fixed salary. Every month, no delays. You take care of the house, organize a clean, and I pay you properly for it." Sarah felt her chest tighten, a mixture of relief and emotion rising in her throat. "Graham, I need someone I can trust," he continued firmly but gently. "And I trust you. Besides, I like having you both around. Oliver loves Mia, and I enjoy your company." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "This isn't charity, Sarah. It never was. It's recognition. You work well, you're honest, you're careful, and I need someone like that here. So, what do you think?" Sarah felt the tears well up, hot, impossible to hold back. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to control herself, but the emotion was too strong. I accept," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Graham smiled, a wide, relieved smile. "Really?" "Really," Sarah repeated, now more firmly, wiping away the falling tears. "I accept." She felt the weight she had been carrying on her shoulders for months, maybe years, finally begin to lift. For the first time, she had real stability. She had a permanent job. She had a guaranteed salary. She had real hope that things could get better. "Thank you," she said, her voice still trembling. "Now thank you so much." "Stop thanking me," Graham said, smiling. "You deserve this. You deserve much more, in fact." Sarah laughed through her tears, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Across the room, Mia had stopped playing. She noticed her mother was crying and ran to her, was worried. "Mommy, are you okay?" Sarah crouched down and hugged her daughter tightly. "I am, my love. I'm very well." "Why are you crying?" "Because something very good happened." Mia frowned, confused. "What?" Sarah looked at Graham, who smiled back, and then looked at her daughter. "Mommy is going to work here every day now. We'll come here all the time." Mia's eyes widened, shining with joy. "All the time. All the time." Mia jumped, shouting with happiness. "Oliver, Oliver, we're coming here every day." Oliver jumped up and ran to them. "Really? Really?" Mia confirmed, jumping again. The two hugged tightly, celebrating as if they had won the best gift in the world. Sarah and Graham exchanged a look, and in that look there was something different. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just respect. It was true connection. It was mutual care. It was something that was beginning to grow, silent but strong, between the two of them. The late afternoon arrived peacefully. The children were on the floor of the living room. Mia was drawing a huge house with colorful flowers around it. Oliver was drawing fast cars and giant airplanes. Sarah and Graham were sitting on the sofa, side by side, watching. The house was silent, but it was a comfortable, cozy silence. No words were needed to fill the space. Graham looked at the children for a long time, thoughtfully. He seemed to be deciding something important in his head. Finally, he turned to Sarah. "Sarah, there's something I want to tell you." She looked at him, paying complete attention. His tone was serious, but not heavy. It was intimate. "What is it?" Graham took a deep breath, as if preparing himself. "I'm adopted." Sarah blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected that. Graham continued, looking at his own hands. "I was adopted when I was little. I was about 4 years old, more or less. Before that, well, I had nothing. I lived in a shelter, went hungry, had no one who truly cared for me." He paused, but there was no sadness in his voice. There was acceptance. "Until a family chose me. A wealthy family, yes, but it wasn't about the money. It was about love. They gave me everything. Education, opportunities, affection. They taught me values. They taught me to be grateful for what I had. They taught me that we have to help those in need." Graham looked at Sarah now, directly in the eyes. "I'm very proud of that. My family chose me, and it completely transformed my life. I know the power a gesture of kindness has. I know because I am the result of it." He smiled, a smile full of meaning. "That's why I teach Oliver to be kind. That's why I wanted to help you in that store, because I know what it's like to be on the other side. I know what it's like to need and not have." Sarah was listening to every word, feeling their weight, feeling that truth sink deep into her chest. It didn't hurt. It was beautiful. It was light. "I've never told anyone here in town," Graham continued, his voice low but steady. "People here only know me as a businessman, as the guy who has money. But I felt like you would understand. I felt like you wouldn't judge me for it." Sarah felt the tears return, but they were different tears now. They were tears of understanding, of deep connection. "Thank you for trusting me," she said, her voice choked. "Thank you for listening to me." They were silent for a moment, just looking at each other. Sarah looked at him in a completely different way now. For the first time, she saw his heart completely open. He wasn't just the wealthy man who had helped her in the store. He was a man who had lived, who had suffered, who knew exactly what it was like to need help. And that changed everything. It changed the way she saw him. It changed the way she felt around him. "You're amazing," Sarah said, without thinking, letting the words come straight from her heart. Graham looked at her, surprised. "Me? Yes, you are." He smiled, a little awkwardly, and looked away for a second. "You are too, Sarah. You are too." Silence returned, but now it was charged with something deeper, something neither of them could name yet, but which was there, growing slowly, strengthening itself. Mia held up the drawing she had made, interrupting the moment. "Mommy, look, it's our new house." Sarah looked at the drawing. It was a large house, with colorful flowers, a huge yellow sun in the sky, and in front of the house, 4 people were drawn, 2 children holding hands, and 2 adults beside them. Sarah felt her eyes sting again, but she smiled. "It's beautiful, my love." Graham also looked at the drawing, and something deep moved within him. He looked at Sarah, and the two exchanged another glance, a glance that said more than any word ever could. There, in that living room, with the children playing on the floor and the soft afternoon light streaming through the window, Something was being born. Something real. Something strong. Something that went beyond gratitude or respect. And for the first time in a long time, both Sarah and Graham felt that maybe, just maybe, life was giving them a second chance. A chance to start over. A chance to build something new. A chance to be truly happy. The following days brought a subtle but undeniable change. After Graham opened his heart and told her about his adoption, something transformed between them. The relationship moved to a new level. It was no longer just employer and employee. It was no longer just gratitude. It was something different, deeper. Sarah would arrive in the morning and Graham would already be at the door, waiting with a genuine smile. Good morning. Good morning, she would reply, feeling her heart beat a little faster. They treated each other with more affection now, more naturally, more intimacy. Conversations flowed easily, without formality. Graham started spending more time nearby while she worked, not in an invasive way, but present. He would start conversations while she cleaned the kitchen, asking about her life, about how Mia was doing in school, about the dreams she held on to, about simple but important things. And he truly listened. It wasn't that distracted listening most people did. It was genuine attention, eyes fixed on her, absorbing every word, asking questions, showing real interest. Sarah felt seen, perhaps for the first time in years. One morning, Sarah walked into the kitchen and found a cup of coffee already prepared, steaming on the counter. She picked it up, took a sip, and paused. It was perfect, exactly how she liked it. Strong with a light touch of sugar, the ideal temperature. Graham walked into the kitchen carrying some folders and saw her expression. Was it good? Sarah looked at him, surprised. It's perfect. How did you know exactly? He smiled, a little shyly. I paid attention yesterday, and the day before, too. Sarah felt her face warm. It was a simple gesture, but it meant so much. It meant he noticed her, that he cared. Thank you, she said, smiling. You're welcome. Another day, while Sarah was putting towels away in the hallway cabinet, a button on her coat came loose and fell to the floor. She picked up the button and looked at the coat, sighing. Oh, no, this coat is old anyway. Graham, who was walking by in the hallway, stopped. Let me see. He took the button from her hand and examined the place where it had fallen off. Wait here. He returned minutes later carrying a small sewing kit. Needle, thread, scissors. Sarah looked on, surprised. You know how to sew. I learned from my adoptive mother, he said, already skillfully threading the needle. She used to say everyone should know how to fix their own things. Sarah watched as Graham sewed the button back on. He did it carefully, concentrated, his hands steady and precise. He wasn't an amateur. It was well done. When he finished, he cut the thread, tied a firm knot, and held the coat out for her to put on. There. Let me see if it's right. Sarah put on the coat. Graham walked closer and adjusted the collar, pulling it slightly to the side, fixing the fabric's position. And in that moment, as he adjusted the coat, the two of them were very close, too close to ignore. Sarah slowly lifted her eyes and met his gaze. Graham also stopped, his hands still on her coat collar. They stayed there, frozen, looking at each other. The air between them felt charged, full of something neither of them could name, but which both felt. His blue eyes were fixed on hers. Sarah could feel his breath, close, warm. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure he could hear it. Graham swallowed hard, but didn't pull away. It's good, he said, his voice softer than normal. Thank you, Sarah whispered. They stayed like that for a few more seconds, until the sound of children's laughter from the backyard broke the moment. Graham took a step back, running a hand through his hair, a little awkward. I'll go check on them. Sarah just nodded, her heart still racing. The children, meanwhile, were becoming increasingly inseparable. Mia and Oliver played together all day long. They were like siblings now. They ate together, drew side by side, invented stories, made plans about what they would play the next day. Tomorrow we'll make a giant snow castle, Oliver said, excited. And we'll put a colorful flag on top, Mia added, enthusiastic, and we'll make a moat around it. With a bridge. Sarah and Graham watched from afar, leaning against the kitchen door, smiling at the children's complicity. Seeing Mia and Oliver so happy warmed both their hearts. "They get along so well," Sarah commented. "It feels like they've always been friends," Graham agreed, "or siblings." Graham looked at her when she said that, and the two exchanged a quick but meaningful look. At the end of another day, as Sarah was getting ready to leave, putting on her coat and adjusting her purse, Graham approached. "Sarah." She turned around, pinning her hair behind her ear. Thank you for another day," she said, smiling. Graham shook his head slowly. "I should be thanking you. You both make this house feel alive again." Sarah felt her chest tighten. She looked at him, and the two stayed there, exchanging a long, intense look, full of meaning. "We like being here," she said sincerely, "and I like having you here, very much." They stood still, looking at each other in the silence. The silence was comfortable, but it was charged with something more, something that was growing between them, impossible to ignore, something that neither of them was trying to hide anymore. Mia came running in, holding a new drawing. "Mommy, look what Oliver and I made." The moment dissolved, but the feeling remained. Sarah crouched down, took the drawing, looked at it, and complimented them, but her mind was still on the glance she had exchanged with Graham. When they finally left, putting Mia in the car, it was getting dark. The sky was filled with shades of orange and purple. Sarah closed the car door and gave one last look toward the house. Graham was standing at the front door, leaning against the frame, his hands in his pockets. He waved slowly. Sarah waved back, feeling something warm grow inside her chest. Something special was being born there, between those two people whom destiny had brought together so improbably, and they both knew it. They knew it, and, for the first time, they weren't afraid to let it happen. The rain began to fall in the middle of the afternoon. It wasn't a heavy, violent rain. It was gentle, constant, the kind of rain that soothes. The sound of the drops hitting the roof and the windows created a repetitive, almost hypnotic melody. Sarah was in the kitchen, finishing putting away the clean dishes. She looked out the window and saw the rain running down the glass, forming small rivers that flowed in crooked lines. The sky was grey, heavy, but it wasn't depressing. It was cozy. Graham was in the living room, working on his laptop, but the sound of the rain distracted him. He looked outside too, watching the water fall onto the garden, soaking the snow that still clung to the backyard. The children were in the corner of the living room, playing more calmly than usual. Mia and Oliver were assembling a large puzzle, lying prone on the rug, concentrating on fitting the pieces together. Their usual energy had diminished. The rain seemed to have that effect. Sarah finished in the kitchen and went to the living room. Graham slowly closed his laptop and placed it on the coffee table. He looked at her. "Do you want to sit down for a bit? You've worked enough today." Sarah hesitated, but eventually agreed. She sat on the sofa, leaving a small space between them. But it wasn't a large gap. It was comfortable, close. They were silent for a while, just listening to the rain. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind of silence that exists between people who don't need to fill every second with words. Sarah watched the children, who remained focused on the puzzle. Mia giggled softly every time she found the right piece. Oliver helped her, showing her where to fit it. "They're happy together," Sarah said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "They are," Graham agreed. "I've never seen Oliver connect with someone like this." Sarah smiled, but there was something melancholic in the smile. Graham noticed. "What is it?" She took a while to answer. She looked at her own hands, clasped in her lap. "Sometimes I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Of failing her, Mia. Of not being enough. Of not being able to give her everything she deserves." Graham turned his body toward her, paying complete attention. "Sarah, you are an incredible mother." She shook her head. I try very hard. But some days I look at her and I think, what if I'm not enough? What if she grows up and realizes everything I couldn't give her?" Her voice was breaking. Graham felt his chest tighten. She won't think that. Because she has what truly matters. She has love. She has care. She has a mother who would do anything for her. Sarah quickly wiped her eyes, trying to hide the tears that were starting to appear. I'm also afraid of losing everything again, of things getting better and then falling apart. It happened before. It can happen again. Graham was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. So I understand that fear. Sarah looked at him, surprised. You do? I do, he repeated. I'm also afraid of getting attached and losing. I've lost before, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. He looked at the children, thoughtful. But with you two, I feel something different. I feel peace. For the first time in a long time, this house doesn't feel empty. Sarah felt her heart race. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the vulnerability in his eyes. Graham continued, his voice low but firm. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you two to come into my life this way, but I care about you, much more than I ever thought possible. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with emotion. Sarah felt her heart beating so fast it felt like it would burst out of her chest. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Graham looked at her, waiting but without pressure. Finally, Sarah found her voice. I've never felt as safe anywhere as I do here. The words came out in a whisper, but they carried an enormous weight. It was a confession. It was the purest truth she had to offer. Graham felt something move inside him, something deep, intense. You can stay here whenever you want, you and Mia. This house is yours too. Sarah felt the tears return, but this time she didn't try to hide them. I'm afraid of depending on someone again. I've always been alone. I've always had to handle everything by myself. You don't have to be alone, Graham said gently. Not anymore. Sarah looked into his eyes, and she saw sincerity. She saw care. She saw something she didn't know if she deserved, but desperately wanted. I don't want to disappoint you, she said, her voice trembling. You never could. The emotional tension between them grew. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was gentle, beautiful, mature. It was something that went beyond physical attraction. It was true connection. It was mutual understanding. Graham slowly raised his hand and wiped a tear running down Sarah's face. The touch was soft, careful. She closed her eyes for a second, feeling the warmth of his hand. When she opened her eyes, they were even closer. Graham hesitated for a moment, as if deciding something. Then slowly he pulled her into a hug. Sarah allowed herself to be enveloped. She put her arms around him and rested her head on his shoulder. Graham held her tightly but gently, as if she was something precious. The hug was long, sincere. It said everything that words hadn't yet said. It said that he cared, that she was important, that there in that embrace she was safe, that. Sarah felt the tears fall freely now, soaking his sweater, but she didn't care, and neither did he. They stayed like that for several minutes, just holding each other, listening to the rain outside, feeling each other's warmth. Across the room, Mia lifted her head and saw her mother and Graham hugging. She didn't completely understand what was happening, but she smiled. She nudged Oliver. Look. Oliver looked and smiled too. They're hugging. It's because they like each other, Mia said, with the simplicity of a child. I think so. The children returned to their puzzle, satisfied. Sarah finally pulled away from the hug, but not very far. She stayed close and looking at Graham. His eyes were moist too. Thank you, she said. For what? For making me feel like I'm not alone. Graham smiled, a smile full of meaning. You'll never be alone again. I promise. Sarah felt something open up inside her chest, something that had been closed for so long. It was hope. It was possibility. It was the chance to be happy again. They stayed there, sitting side by side, closer now than before. The rain continued outside. The house was warm and cozy, and the children played peacefully. And in that moment, Sarah knew. She knew that something had changed permanently. She knew that she had found something she didn't know she was looking for. A place, a person, a family. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed her heart to believe that maybe, just maybe, She deserved this. The months passed like pages turning in a book, slowly but constantly, bringing changes that completely transformed Sarah and Mia's lives. The routine had changed permanently. Sarah now worked with stability and real dignity. It was no longer that desperate rush for uncertain odd jobs, that constant anguish of waking up without knowing if she would have money to pay the bills at the end of the month. She had a permanent job, a certain, predictable salary. And more than that, she had respect, she had purpose, she had recognized value. Mia and Oliver were practically siblings now. They spent their days together, playing non-stop, inventing elaborate adventures in the snow-covered backyard, sharing whispered secrets under the covers during rainy afternoons. When Sarah arrived to pick Mia up at the end of the day, the girl always asked for 5 more minutes, 10 more, just a little longer to finish the game they were in the middle of. And Sarah and Graham, they functioned like a perfect team, without needing to plan, without needing to coordinate every move. It was natural. It flowed with impressive ease. He prepared coffee in the morning exactly the way she liked it while she tidied the kitchen. She folded the clean clothes while he helped the children with their homework. They talked about everything, laughed together at silly jokes, shared worries and celebrated small victories. It was as if they had always been this way, as if they had always belonged to each other. But there was still something unspoken between them, something important that hung in the air, patiently waiting for the right moment. It was a special Sunday. Winter was returning in full force, and the first Christmas decorations were already starting to appear in store windows. Graham had woken up that morning with a decision already made in his heart. He couldn't wait any longer. He didn't want to wait any longer. The children were in the backyard, playing happily in the fresh snow that had fallen overnight. Mia and Oliver were making increasingly creative snowmen, laughing loudly. Their cheeks red from the cold, their noses icy, but completely happy. Inside the warm house, Sarah and Graham set the living room table together. She carefully placed the plates while he folded the napkins. They laughed at some silly joke he had made about how napkin folding was an underestimated art, dividing tasks like a couple, without even realizing how natural it felt. Sarah stopped for a moment, looking at the set table, and smiled contentedly. "It looks nice." "It does," Graham agreed. But he wasn't looking at the table. He was looking at her, at the way she lightly bit her lip when concentrating, at how her blonde hair fell over her shoulders. Sarah noticed his intense gaze and felt her face warm. "What?" Graham took a deep breath, gathering his courage. It was now or never. "Sarah, can I tell you something important?" His tone changed completely. It became more serious, loaded with meaning, but still held that gentleness. Sarah turned entirely toward him, her heart already beginning to race, giving him her absolute attention. "Of course. Go ahead." Graham put his hands in his jeans pockets, visibly nervous, which was rare for him. He looked down at the floor for a second, organizing the words in his head. "As these months, with you and Mia here being part of our routine, they've been the best I've had in a long time." Sarah felt her heart beat even faster. She could barely breathe properly. "For me too," she said, her voice coming out low, almost a whisper. Graham lifted his eyes and looked directly into her blue eyes with deep intensity. "I want you in my life, Sarah, not just here in the house, working, taking care of things, but as part of our family. Truly, completely." Sarah felt the tears well up instantly, hot, inevitable. She opened her mouth to try to speak, but she couldn't. The words were caught in her throat along with all the emotion. Graham took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "I know you're afraid. I know you've been through a lot of difficult things, that you've been hurt before. But I want to be family for you and Mia. If you want it too, we'll build this together. One day at a time, no rush." Sarah covered her mouth with a trembling hand, trying to hold back the crying, but it was impossible. Tears streamed freely down her face, wetting her fingers. She tried to speak, but her voice failed. "You don't have to be afraid," Graham said firmly, "but with all the gentleness in the world. I won't let you fall. Never. I promise you that." Sarah looked at him, truly looked deeply, at this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly, this man who had seen her at her worst, vulnerable and desperate, and yet had reached out without hesitation. This man who had taught his son to be kind, who had carefully fixed the button on her coat, who prepared coffee exactly the way she liked it every morning. The fear was still there, whispering in the back of her mind, but now it was smaller, weaker. His gaze was so firm, so sincere, so full of true promise, that the fear simply vanished, dissolving like snow in the sun. "I want to," she finally said, her voice coming out between sobs. "I want to, more than anything in this world." Graham smiled, an enormous smile, lighting up his whole face, full of relief and happiness. He took another step and pulled her into a tight hug. Sarah allowed herself to be completely embraced, crying into his shoulder. But now they were different tears. They were tears of deep relief, of genuine joy, of renewed hope. "We're going to be okay," Graham whispered in her ear. "We're going to be a real family. Me, you, Oliver, and Mia, all together." Sarah squeezed the hug even tighter, holding on to him firmly. At that exact moment, the back door burst open. Mia and Oliver ran in, covered in snow from head to toe, laughing loudly, bringing the cold and the joy with them. "Mommy, Graham, we made 3 giant snowmen." They stopped when they saw the two of them hugging. Mia looked at her mother, saw the tears, and became worried. "Mommy, are you okay?" Sarah pulled away from the hug, wiping her face, and smiled the widest smile she had ever given. "I am, my love. I'm very well." Oliver looked at his father, then at Sarah, and then a smile started to appear on his face. Are you going to be together, like, forever?" Graham looked at Sarah, seeking confirmation. She nodded, smiling. He looked back at his son and nodded too. "We are. If you two want that too." Mia didn't wait another second. She screamed with pure happiness, a high-pitched cry that filled the house, and ran, jumping into her mother's arms. Oliver did the same with his father, laughing. And then the 4 of them hugged together, right there in the middle of the living room, squeezed tight, laughing, crying, completely happy. "Now we're a real family," Mia shouted. "A really, real family," Oliver agreed, jumping. Sarah looked at Graham over the children's heads, and the two exchanged a deep look, full of true love, of solid promise, of a bright future. Christmas arrived quickly, and this time it was completely different. The living room was beautifully decorated. A huge tree occupied the corner, full of colorful ornaments chosen by the children. White lights twinkled softly. Green wreaths adorned the walls. The delicious smell of freshly baked cookies drifted from the kitchen, mixing with cinnamon and hot chocolate. Mia and Oliver were sitting on the floor, amidst torn wrapping paper, excitedly exchanging gifts. "Look what I got! It's a new game!" Mia showed the box. "And look at mine! It's a giant car!" Oliver showed off proudly. Sarah and Graham were on the sofa, watching. She was leaning against him, her head resting on his shoulder. His arm was around her, holding her close. Sarah looked at the illuminated tree, at the happy children, at the cozy house. She whispered, with admiration, "All this started because of $10. Graham heard her. He turned his head and looked at her with that gentle smile she loved. It started because of a kind little boy, and a mother who never gave up on her daughter. Sarah felt the tears return, but they were good tears. She slowly turned and kissed him softly. A short kiss, but full of deep meaning, full of gratitude, of true love, of promise. The children saw and made sounds of mock disgust, laughing. "Gross," Mia said, covering her eyes but smiling. "They're dating," Oliver teased. Graham and Sarah laughed. He pulled the children closer, and the 4 of them stayed there, hugged on the sofa, looking at the illuminated Christmas tree, feeling each other's warmth. The scene was perfect. A new home, a new story. A family formed not by blood, but by love and generosity. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly. Inside the house, there was warmth, laughter, love. And Sarah, looking around, at Graham, at Mia, at Oliver, at this life she never would have imagined possible, finally allowed her heart to believe. She deserved this. She deserved to be happy, And she was completely, profoundly happy. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.